Scott just made the point. Jeff
Jefferson seems to be a lot more secure, not just.
Hi, everybody. I'm Bill Whittle, and welcome to part two of our three-part trifecta on what I'm calling the psychology of suck. Now, in part one, we looked at social proof, the almost overwhelming desire to do what others are doing, despite the fact that that action might be contrary to our deepest held beliefs. Now, in this episode, we're going to talk about how systems end up doing things that they were never designed to do because of the psychology of suck. So let's bring in Steve Green and the not-ot, our friend Stephen Cruiser, to take the place of our vacationing Scott-ot. And let's get to the basement of this very bad id idea. Gents, in the last episode, we mentioned the catastrophe of the F-35. It's a $1 trillion gold-plated fighter that can't dogfight, can't turn. Now, it was originally intended to be a small, light, cheap replacement for the F-16 and the A-10, but it's become the most expensive product in human history, and it just doesn't work, except that it does work. It actually performs brilliantly. The problem is, we think the mission of the F-35 is to be a superior weapon system, but that's not the mission of the F-35. As Pierre Sprey, one of the men responsible for the F-16 and the A-10, which were and remain exceptionally capable weapons, as Pierre Sprey said, the mission of the F-35 is to spend money. Once you understand that, the F-35 is the most successful program in history. Spending money became the statistic, it's the static point for the F-35 not winning dogfights. Now, Steve Cruiser, think about this. The worse that a public school district does, the more the alarms go off and the more money and resources get thrown at it. You can say that the mission of the public school system is not to produce good students. The mission is to produce bad students, because if you are introducing the best students in the world out of your public school system, you don't need to keep getting more money. By the way, we spend about 3 times per student on education compared to the next highest country. So, Steve Cruiser, if an educator heard me say that the mission of the public school system was to make bad students, they'd think I was nuts. But that's the danger of this kind of system static suck. No one is intending the harm. It's just what comes out of the system.
As I've been saying for decades, and people often think I'm a nut job for saying so, I don't think you two will think I'm a nut job, but the mission of a bureaucracy is to perpetuate the bureaucracy.
Exactly.
That's all it is there for. It has no other function. They can throw all the beautiful, flowery words all over what we're going to be trying to do, all they want to do. Bureaucrats just want to stay bureaucrats. They don't want to rise above anything. They want the system that's in place to get more bloated so they can have more bureaucrats running around and feel even safer. And that's all a bureaucracy does. It sounds simplistic, but it's the truth. And it is borne out time and time and time again in bureaucracies all over the world, not just in the United States. That's what they're there for. They seek this mediocre level where nobody's rocking the boat, so nobody notices anything, so the system doesn't go away. That's all they're there to do.
That's exactly right. Steve Green, let's talk about an administrative system, a bureaucracy that started out as probably the most efficient and remarkable bureaucracy in the history of the world. In the 1960s, Steve, NASA's job was to put a man on the moon before the end of the decade and bring him safely back to Earth, period. Now, today, NASA spends about $18 billion. That's almost exactly what they spent in constant dollars as they did in the year 2000. Only in 2000, we were flying 4 space shuttles, and today, for the same money, we're not flying any. So, Steve Green, what is NASA's mission today?
Muslim outreach, Bill. I thought you knew that. Come on, get with the times. Yeah, that's an important job. Look, I just saw a report this morning. So this was in Greece, not in the United States, but as Dr. McCoy said, the bureaucratic mind is the only universal constant. So there was a program in Greece in 1956 or 1957 to raise money to authorize tax dollars to drain this pond and build this road. And over the course of 1 year, the pond was drained and the road was built, and the budget item never went away until 2010. There were still 30 paid tax-sucking bureaucrats on this program, including the head of the program and his driver, until 2010. There are no words for this madness, and it goes on here. In this country, I think we have 47 different federal jobs programs. Just in the federal, forget what your state is doing. There are 50 states. They've each got their 47. You couldn't streamline this thing with a blowtorch, but darn it, I'd sure like to try.
You know what it's like, Steve? It's like when you haven't moved from one place to another, if you've lived in the same house for 25 or 30 years, then you move, and you suddenly realize all the stuff that you've collected, all the clothes that you haven't worn in 15, 20 years, all the stuff that hasn't seen the light of day in forever. If you move every 2 or 3 years, you suddenly get kind of lean. Yeah. Look, my friends, it's like Steve Green said, but in the 1960s, NASA wasn't doing Muslim outreach. In fact, NASA wasn't doing social outreach of any kind. You want to know why? Because NASA was busy, that's why. NASA had a clear mission: get to the moon by December 31st, 1969, and hopefully come back again. Now, NASA, as it's constructed today, is never going to go to Mars. Not ever, never, ever. It's not going to happen. The National Mars Administration at least has a chance to get to Mars before it, too, becomes primarily concerned with, used tire recycling or protecting the Guatemalan water snake or whatever else it will mutate into in order to do what Steve Cruiser said, which is keep the money coming. That's why we're spending almost $4 trillion a year on our government. Agencies that are successful, that complete their mission, like NASA and the EPA, for example, they don't just go away. They find a new mission to justify the money. We have to stop this. NASA, the EPA, the Departments of Energy and Education, they all need to be broken down, renamed, and have their budgets slashed so they can do the few remaining things that might still need to be done. In part 3, we're going to look at some solutions to this psychology of suck. For PJTV, I'm Bill Whittle.